Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about Kriya Yoga, the breathless state, and deep meditation. So the breathless state is a central aspect of Kriya Yoga, and its significance has been outlined by a variety of different Kriya Yoga teachers. The ancient yogis discovered that the secret of cosmic consciousness is intimately linked with breath mastery. The life force, which is ordinarily absorbed in maintaining the heart pump, must be freed for higher activities by a method of calming and stilling the ceaseless demands of the breath. Untying the cord of breath, which binds the soul to the body, Kriya serves to prolong life and enlarge the consciousness to infinity. The yoga method overcomes the tug-of-war between the mind and the matter-bound senses, and frees the devotee to re-inherit his eternal kingdom. He knows his real nature is bound neither by physical encasement nor by breath, symbol of the moral enslavement to air, to nature's elemental compulsions. Pranayama results in breathlessness, which calms the heart and lungs, and which is favorable for one's longevity. In the breathless state, the life force, which is ordinarily dependent on oxygen for its manifestation and perpetuation in the human body, finds freedom from its slavery to the breath, that is, oxygen, and moves spiritward. Breathlessness is deathlessness. And so the idea of breathlessness really has a mystique in Kriya Yoga and in other yogic paths, where breathlessness is often seen as an intrinsic part of yogic accomplishment. The term breathlessness seems to imply airlessness, meaning that one is not actually breathing air at all, that the breath completely stops. And so this has really built up the mystique about yogis being in a breathless state and seeing that as somehow a superhuman accomplishment. But when we look back 100 or more years, and the way that they would test whether or not somebody was actually in a breathless state, they would normally put a mirror underneath the nose, and then if there was no condensation in the mirror, they would assume that one was not breathing at all. But we know from the modern perspective that if one stops breathing, there's a whole host of things that start to happen in the body, including going unconscious, getting into a state of respiratory distress, and so on, which inevitably culminates in death if one is deprived of air for a long enough time. And so we know that if you intentionally hold your breath for long enough, you will pass out, because the body's central nervous system will reset the system. It will basically make one go unconscious, and then the autonomic functions of breathing will restart in the system, because the body system is designed to keep one alive. So one never really goes truly into a breathless state. So if the breathless state is not an airless state, is not really stopping breathing entirely, what actually is it? Well, according to the originator of Kriya Yoga, Yogi Raj Lahiri Baba, we're not talking about breathlessness, we're talking about the tranquil breath. And the tranquil breath is a very subtle form of breathing, which is symptomatic of going into deep states of meditation. And Lahiri Baba describes this very eloquently in one of his letters to his students, which is published in his Garland of Letters. Continuously doing japa in this way, chakra by chakra, eventually the mind will not leave the path of the chakras and will not go anywhere else. And at the final moments of Kriya, the state after the post-Kriya state, paravasta, the state where spontaneously there is no desire to breathe in or out, it is in that state where one's mind should be. The aforementioned state is called Krishna. That is the meaning of the word Krishna. This means that state where inhalation and exhalation is spontaneously renounced. That is a state which is Krishna in the form of the tranquil breath. Those who do this sadhana in secret are the gopis. This is the meaning of the word gopi in Vrindavan, which is one's own body. This life ceaselessly awaits the appearance of Krishna. So in this passage, Lahiri Baba describes the desire to neither breathe in or out. And this is the hallmark of the tranquil breath. And this state of the tranquil breath starts to coincide with the process of internalization in meditation. So in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Patanjali talks about pranayama, a form of intentional breathing that brings one into a low idle state, leading to pratyahara, which is a state of internalization, a process of internalization. As one becomes more internalized, one starts to experience dharana, which is an internalized concentration. And in Kriya Yoga, when one has been doing Kriya Pranayama, this form of intentional breathing that brings us into a low idle state, and starting to become internalized, starting to experience pratyahara, the bodily sense starts to disappear from one's awareness. And the breath becomes more calm and the mind becomes more calm. The calming of the breath to the point where one has no desire to breathe in or out is the onset of the tranquil breath that happens when one starts to go into internalized concentration, into dharana. And so this onset of the tranquil breath is a natural process. It is likely an evolutionary adaptation for Homo sapiens. With Kriya Yoga, we're cultivating the onset of this tranquil breath through the process of Kriya Pranayama and internalization. And so in the tranquil breath, the breath becomes extremely subtle. So some people think that because the breath becoming more calm and then they lose awareness of the breath, that they're in the tranquil breath. They're not. It is a very marked transition getting into the tranquil breath. When the tranquil breath starts to come on, if you haven't experienced it before, you will definitely notice that something is different. It feels like your breath has completely stopped. And in some cases, it does stop for a certain period of time. But really, it just becomes so subtle because you are so internalized that it seems like it's not breathing at all. Now, if we were to take you and put a bag over your head, you would get into respiratory distress because you do need air. So you're still breathing, but very, very subtly. And it is a very marked transition getting into the tranquil breath, into dharana. You will definitely notice. It can feel like you're in an internalized void and the breath is absent. That is the hallmark of the tranquil breath. So some who have misinterpreted themselves as being in the tranquil breath has said, well, I can get into the tranquil breath in 12 Kriyas. If you are a very developed Kriya yogi, that may very well be true, and I certainly have some students who are able to do that. But let's look at what the master, Lahiri Baba, said about the tranquil breath. He said that 12 pranayama, practices of Kriya Yoga, equals pratyahara. This is the first benchmark that we want to know as a Kriya Yoga student. What that means is that if you practice 12 repetitions of Kriya Pranayama correctly, you will start to have an experience of pratyahara, of internalization. So the body is starting to recede from your awareness. If you're not getting it within 12 Kriya, well, you're not doing your Kriya in an optimal way. Now, it's okay to not do it in an optimal way because you can always improve your practice. So maybe it's taking you 24 or 36 or 48 and so on. What you want to do is improve your quality of the Kriya, right? So it's not about doing more numbers of Kriya, it's about doing Kriya effectively. But if you can fine-tune your Kriya to be able to get internalization, pratyahara, within 12 Kriya, you know you're on the right path. So that's the first benchmark. The second benchmark is that Lahiri Baba said that 144 pranayama equals dharana. What that means is that as a benchmark, from his perspective as a master of Kriya Yoga and his own experience of it, he said that if you do 144 Kriya Pranayama, you are going to experience dharana. So that means the dharana, the internalized concentration that usually has the disappearance of the body and the onset of the tranquil breath, would take 144 Kriyas, if practiced correctly, to experience. 144 Kriyas is a fairly significant amount of Kriyas. If you're doing 2 Kriyas a minute, it's going to take you over an hour to do that. And so to experience dharana in less than 144 Kriyas, either your technique of Kriya needs to be extremely good, or you need to have done previously a considerable number of Kriyas that have conditioned and set the stage for the unfolding of dharana. So this leads to the important point that if you misdiagnose your practice, and by virtue of that misunderstanding, you don't put the requisite effort into your Kriya practice, what that means is that you're basically shortchanging yourself. So the quality of the Kriya Yoga technique is important. And if you don't have the quality, no amount of quantity will make up for that. But you still need the quantity. The quantity of Kriya is like a form of training. You're training your body, mind, etc. to get into these states. You actually need to do the work for that. You can't just say, oh, well, I've accomplished this, and now I'm not even going to put the effort into it. So follow the benchmarks of the master. 12 Kriya, Pranayama. 144 Kriya, Dharana. 1728 Kriya, Dhyan, or absorption. 20,736 Kriya, Samadhi. So my recommendation is to put the work into Kriya. Don't delude yourself into thinking that you've achieved at a level that you haven't. Practice the technique. See if it fits with the benchmarks that Lahiri Baba has set for us. Are you getting internalized within 12 Kriya? If you do 144 Kriya, are you starting to have the onset of the tranquil breath? The true onset of the tranquil breath where you feel that breath suspension. Breath suspension is kumbhaka in yoga. If you're not sure you're doing your technique correctly, connect with your instructor, your Kriya Yoga instructor, your Kriya Yoga guru. But most of all, apply what you have learned and actually practice your Kriya Yoga. Practice your Kriya Yoga and you will get results. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.